Welcome back to VADA Live. I'm your host, Dan Kerrigan. Much like virtually all of our guests we bring on VADA Live, Jim Fitzpatrick needs no introduction. He's co-founder CBT News, one of the leading retail automotive industry's digital media platforms, from dealership leadership and automotive marketing to interviewing some of the biggest names in the biz. Jim has the broad perspective on the trends, convos, and challenges shaping the industry. Oh, and by the way, he'll be joining us for VADA 26. That's a convention in Virginia Beach. Jim, thanks for joining us on VADA Live.
Dan, thanks for having me. I mean, and by the way, kudos to you. You do an incredible job. You're making me nervous a little bit here. And as I said earlier, if this thing at VADA doesn't work out, I have a spot for you right here on the anchor desk alongside me, because you do an incredible job. So keep it up. And thank you for that very nice opener there. So I'm anxious to hear from this guy, Jim Fitzpatrick. He sounds interesting.
Very much so, Jim. Thank you for the kind words. It's amazing to have the opportunity as I learn this business through the eyes, ears, and interviews of the folks involved, yourself included. It's just a fantastic opportunity, and happy to support the VADA team doing so. So speaking of VADA, there's an event, the convention. You are on the list this year to attend and support. What's it like? What made you decide, June's a busy month, to show up to VADA 26 and support the organization? And why do you think events like this really matter to get dealers together?
You know, these events mean more now than I think they ever have, with all of the different threats attacking the franchise dealer today, including the franchise system itself is really at risk as we see different car companies decide to sell directly to consumers. But you've got that topic, you've got EV topic, the very important EV topic, I should say, and of course Chinese vehicles that everybody seems to be very passionate about, whether they should be allowed, they should not be allowed, whatever the case might be. So you've got so many different things, including AI. I mean, AI is going to change the world, but it's certainly going to change the auto industry as we know it, almost in every single aspect of the dealership operation. So times like this, wow, you've got to get out to VADA. If you're a dealer in the Virginia market, or I should say in the state of Virginia, and you're a member, you got to get out to VADA. But everybody's got to come together on this, talk about the issues, try to come up with solutions, and there's no better place than events like this. So I'm thrilled that Don asked me to come out once again and join him on the stage and talk about a lot of these different issues that that dealers are confronted with every day in their daily operation. So listen, it's where you got to be if you're a car dealer.
You've interviewed just about everybody in the business. Safe to say at this point, Jim, which is fantastic. With your background interviewing, staying current on all the issues, it's really a question of news dealers can use. What do you think really separates a strong operator nowadays, or dealer principal, from the pack right now? What are you seeing and hearing?
So from what I see and the individuals that I talk to, the dealers that are most engaged, as you know, and I've been in the industry since the very early 80s, and I've worked for a number of different dealers and was a dealer principal myself. The dealers that win today are the ones that are most engaged with their dealership. And what I mean by that is the dealers that are out there that go, look, I own the dealerships, maybe I own 5, maybe I own 10, maybe I own 20, maybe I'm flying off on my jet somewhere or in the back of my yacht or what have you, which, by the way, I don't begrudge anybody. I think those are all wonderful things. But I think today's dealer, the ones that really get it, are the ones that are engaged, that are truly dealer operators. They're in the stores, maybe not every day, but they're in there at least 3-4 days a week. They understand the business so that they can then better manage the business. And especially with all of the things, as I said, that are coming up, AI that we're dealing with, and so many other factors. The ones that I think are going to win in the future are the ones that are most engaged, going to events like VADA, that they know what's happening in the industry. They're not just real estate holders or holding companies for real estate that happen to sell cars. They're actually car dealers that happen to own real estate. And I think that there's a difference in the two. And I know the ones that I'm talking to right off the bat, because they can ask me questions or we can have discussions and drill down deep on those issues, because I know that they're actually operating the dealerships and they know from which they speak that these things are really, these issues are facing dealers, and they know either they're looking for the solution or they have solutions that the industry can benefit from. The ones that go, yeah, my name's on the side of the building, but I leave it to my GMs or I leave it to my managers. I don't know. I think they might have trouble moving forward in the future. And some of them have already confessed to me that, I'm halfway out the door. If I can find the right buyer of my group, then I'm going to move on to other things. So engagement is the key.
Hearing you on that engagement. Thank you for that message too, and speaking straight to dealers. If you will indulge me, let's chat China for a second. Sure. You recently had a conversation with Don Hall about China and really the global auto landscape writ large. You joked that it turned into almost a sparring session engaging with Don. What stood out to you the most from that exchange?
Well, first of all, Don's passion. Nothing beats Don Hall's passion for the industry and his defense for the industry. He and I differ on this topic a little bit. I think I mentioned to you before we got recording, we've taken snippets of that conversation and pushed them out on social media. His snippet and his passion in that snippet got already 750,000 views on it, and it's growing every single day. It's gotten about 65,000 comments. So he feels as though, we should absolutely seal off the U.S. market to the Chinese vehicles that are everywhere in the world except for the U.S. Now they're in Mexico. They're obviously Canada fell to the Chinese, and they're allowing a certain number of vehicles to come in. I happen to differ with him on this. I think we should allow the Chinese to sell their vehicles at a very limited number. And I want to make myself clear on this because I don't think that we should open up the floodgates and go, yeah, sure, let's send in all these vehicles. I happen to be selling Toyotas in the very early 80s when they put on kind of a self-imposed number, so the government didn't have to do that. But the Japanese came in, Nissan, Toyota, Mazda, and such, and they said, okay, the domestics, the Detroit 3 were frightened. And they said, wait a minute, these cars coming in better on gas, great quality, lower cost, and this could really put a hurting on the Detroit 3. So they put a kind of a self-imposed number on it, so the government didn't have to. But having said that, I think we can do the same thing with the Chinese vehicles. Let's let them let in 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 vehicles. 300,000 vehicles, in my estimation, is not a threat to the U.S. market. In a market that does 16 plus million new vehicles every year and has been doing that for quite some time. So I don't think a couple 100,000 vehicles are going to hurt anybody. It's probably a dealer network of maybe 100, 200 franchises, something like that. I do think that you need to get from them a commitment to either partner with another domestic brand and build a facility here on U.S. soil over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. I also think tariffs could be, certainly tariffs could play a role in this on the vehicles that are coming in. I'm not so sold on the fact that these are vehicles running around trying to figure out where Americans are going and shopping and doing and listening into our conversations. I don't buy that. I happen to be one that really questions now everything coming out of the U.S. Government. Maybe that's just because of recent events that we don't know what we should listen to or not listen to in this. So I don't think that that's the fear. I think the reason that we've got lawmakers and we've got people out there that are saying, let's seal it off and let's not let them in is because these are people, quite honestly, that are actually, senators and congressmen and what have you that are from Michigan. Hello. Who do you think their constituents are? Same thing with Ohio, same thing with some of these other states where we see large contingencies of labor unions and such managing and running, I should say, car manufacturing plants. So of course they're going to feel passionate that don't let the Chinese in. What I saw in the 80s was that when we did let the Japanese in, guess who got better at building cars? Detroit did. Okay, we saw a better quality car come out of Detroit. We saw a lower cost coming out of Detroit. We saw better gas mileage coming out of Detroit. Why? Because they had the threat of losing market share to an outsider such as Japan. Today, now Honda, Mazda, Toyota, you name them all, and they're all Hyundai, Kia. They're all built right here. Hyundai, Kia, obviously, are a different country, but But nevertheless, these are car manufacturers that build great cars. They're building them right here. I suspect if we work something out, hell, there's talks that Ford is in talks with the Chinese to partner and build a vehicle here. We're already seen that Jim Farley has come out and said, I'm driving a Chinese vehicle. Why? Because I want to find out what these cars are all about. They're incredible on technology. They're great in styling. They build a low-cost car. Yes, they're subsidized by the federal government. When you do a little research, and I ask anybody to listen, go ahead and type in how many domestic our brands, I should say, domestic brands here from the U.S. were actually sold in China. Okay, well, you're going to find that the relationship between China and America on automotive is very, very. It's a rich history. We've sold 50 million GMs in China. We sold over 5 million Fords in China over the course of the last 2 decades, okay? So this whole automotive thing has been a very, very rich situation for the Chinese and the Americans that have benefited from the Chinese. The Americans have benefited in a great way from the Chinese market. That's dwindling, obviously, every year because now the Chinese have figured the manufacturing situation out. So I think that this could be further examined at the very least before we say, nope, no Chinese vehicles, and let's do a deeper dive on that before we completely throw it out the concept completely throw it out the window.
Really appreciate sharing your perspective there. I shall not try to channel Don Hall and his take, but really encourage those watching this to see that interview with Jim and Don regarding China and, of course, communications. Don has talked about his take in the past there. Jim, in many ways, we're two marketers chatting. You had mentioned the number of views those clips have had. The question is, what do you think is a success there? I'm sure it's topic-driven, time, place, opportunity, but you guys put a lot of content out there. So from a content producer to content producer, why do you think that conversation with Don is performing so well? What's resonating with people?
I think that it is touching a nerve with a lot of people. And Don brought up, by the way, as he always does, whenever I interview him, he brought up a lot of very good points. And so I think they resonated, those points, with the people that listened to the conversation. If you'll see, it's kind of a split group. And when you look at the 60,000 plus comments, it's split. Some people are like, let the Chinese in. It's a low cost car. Affordability is an issue. The manufacturers, we're now up to over $50,000 for the price of a new car. Where is this going? The affordability is a big issue. The range anxiety on the batteries, still an issue on EVs, not so much on the Chinese vehicles. These guys are coming up with 300-400 mile batteries and then some, and then shorter time period to get them charged. So these are things that consumers today are liking. The one thing that I will add too, and I want to make sure I made myself clear on about the Chinese vehicles, we have to mandate that they're sold through a franchised system. No other way. Much the way we saw our beloved Volkswagen, Porsche, and Audi, company out there that they came in and said, "Oh, we're going to sell our own EV. It's going to be called Scout, an American brand, but we're going to bypass the franchise system." That would not work for me if the Chinese were to come in, which, by the way, the Chinese do sell through a franchise system. They're building franchises right now in Canada to do that. But I think there's a lot of passion on both sides, and that's why these clips went so viral, and so many people chimed in and said, "Here's what I think about this." And if you take some time, folks, and read the comments, I think you'll be interested to read some of them, first of all, but you'll be interested to see how many people are actually for the Chinese letting the Chinese vehicles into the U.S. So, and Don makes, as I said, some very, very good points on this.
Thank you, Jim. And again, encourage everyone to see that conversation, hear Don's take, which we've been mentioning and really going in a deep dive about a convo you had with Don. So question is, as you look nationally, where do organizations like VADA continue to play a role for dealers? How does VADA stand out? Fortunate to have Don Hall on as a guest. I believe he's even in the intro for Inside Automotive. Where does VADA really stand out nationally from your point of view?
So I would say, and I hope that I'm not getting my other presidents of other associations, state associations bad, but I think they agree with me. You guys are kind of the model out there for what I think a great automotive state association needs to be for their members, and the organization that you have have built there under Don's leadership over the last 30 years. And I think he's just done a wonderful job in that. And there's such a need for a state association to fight those franchise laws, to fight, and it could even be on the side of Chinese vehicles. And if the consensus is let's keep them out, then you need state associations to work on the dealer's behalf. Look, no dealer, and I was a dealer, no dealer wants to sue their OEM. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to get in a fight with their OEM. They might want more stores. They might want a nice relationship. So no individual dealer wants to take their manufacturer on. That's where a guy like Don and VADA, that's why there's such a great place for the VADA and associations like it, because you all are fighting the good fight every single day on franchise dealers' behalf in D.C. and of course in your state house there in Virginia. And that is so vitally important, because as you know, dealers want to run their dealerships. That's what they want. They want to sell cars and service cars. They're not as skilled in working with the state legislature and winning those legislators over to the automotive side to say, hey, we got a voice here. We employ thousands of people. We provide millions, if not billions of dollars in tax revenue and such every single month for the state. So to have a voice like the VADA is just incredible. But I think so many state association presidents agree with me. Some of them worked for Don Hall. I mean, you guys were at the VADA kind of like a college of people that went out then from Don's leadership and took over other state associations and have done a great job. So huge need for sure.
Your background includes ops, advertising, training, media. Question being for you, Jim, how has dealer marketing changed the most from when you first entered the business? Number of directions, bit of a loaded one at that, but yeah. What's top of mind for you as it relates to that right now?
Well, needless to say, I'm a baby boomer, and I've been in the business for now 40 years, and I think I share that with a lot of my colleagues or a lot of dealers out there. We ran full page ads. You know, we would run radio, TV, you know, anything that we could to just do this mass marketing approach. And today, that just doesn't. You know, we haven't been doing that now for quite some time. Now it's all about data, first party data in a dealership's DMS, and I think it's much smarter. It brings down the cost of advertising. It's not a spray and pray approach to marketing. It's more to say, look, if Mr. and Mrs. Jones own a 3-year-old car in their garage, I want to start marketing to them for another car. If they have a propensity on their next purchase to buy an EV, I can dial that in. If I even know if they like a 2-door versus a 4-door. I know how many kids are in their family. In fact, I know if they're now at this point in time empty nesters because their kids moved on. Oh, by the way, I want to market to the kids in that house as well. We have all of that data in our data banks right now, or in the dealership's DMS system, to be able to surgically market to those individuals out there, rather than saying, let's run an ad on TV and see how many people come in off of it. Yeah, there's a place for sponsorships of maybe the weather or the traffic or whatever, but the core dollar really needs to be spent on marketing to that first party data. In addition to that, now we're seeing, and I think it's very exciting, now we're seeing the marketing take another turn here, where you've got social media people, or I should say people that are selling vehicles with their own social media following. And that seems to be working very, very well. It's a little scary, especially with the FTC now breathing down our back about what we're advertising, because when a salesperson gets in front of a car and says, you can buy this car for $34,000, well, that salesperson on social media just became your advertiser and your advertisement for that dealership. And if they didn't abide by the FTC regulations, you, sir or ma'am, that own that dealership will be in hot water for it. So I think there's got to be more discussion around what the salespeople that have social media followings, what are they actually telling your market? And if they bring up prices, they got to do a full disclosure on that. And what I mean by that is, obviously, if it doesn't include a dock fee, doesn't include a rebate for military, doesn't include this or that, now they're going to be held responsible for that. But getting back to the fact that now if I have 10 salespeople and they all have social media followings, man, I can really turbocharge, my marketing from my dealership if it's done right. And but I think it's so exciting, the marketing that we're in right now, because as I said earlier, with first-party data and the technology that is out there, it really allows a dealer to sit back and say, let's advertise to those people that are currently in the market, rather than saying, let's put an ad on Channel 5 tonight and hope that somebody sees it and hope that they're in a market for my vehicle. So these are very exciting times. I think it's really game-changing for sure.
One question we love asking guests, Jim, is, and we've had great sound bites coming out of this for VADA Live. What was your last car buying experience like? Now, recognize that you are recognizable very much so within the industry. So hear me out on that. But what was that like, and what do you look for when you walk into a dealership?
So, this might get some people mad at me here. My last car purchase experience was a Range Rover, okay, a brand new Range Rover. And when I got there, it just so happened that somebody turned down the vehicle, that they were on a waiting list for 3 months and what have you. The guy said, happens to be, the guy turned it down. You happen to be here. You can buy the car right now if you want. I said, all right, fantastic. We'll take the car. We were trading in a Range Rover. We loved the product, what have you. That's when they hit me with the $8,000 radar detector. And it's already been installed to the car, nothing you can do about it. The $3,000 ceramic finish that they already put on the car, can't do anything about it. It's already on the vehicle. Okay. Leaves a bad taste in your mouth, because now I'm paying, I think I ended up paying $15,000 over sticker price for the Range Rover, which, at the time, that's kind of what they were bringing, but the experience was not the greatest, I will tell you, and have not, by the way, spent $140,000 on a vehicle, have not heard from that dealership right here in Atlanta ever since I bought the car. I might have gotten a couple of robocalls, okay, not the same as either a manager or a salesperson calling to even follow up to say, how'd you like the car? Are there any questions that you've got, that we can answer or what have you? Because they're going to sell every vehicle that they get their hands on, or at least then they were, So I think that, after COVID, we got to get back to basics, folks. We got to get back to how we treat that customer to get them back into the dealership for their next vehicle purchase, and also for their service. Obviously, we still suffer in this industry from a very high retention, or I should say a very low retention problem when it comes to service of that vehicle after the sale. So there's a lot of area for improvement. I don't want to come down too much on the industry, but I think everybody knows in their heart of hearts I'm right about this one area that we can really do a better job. Maybe there's a place for AI. I don't think it's the end-all be-all, but I think maybe even AI can help us in some of these areas to communicate better with the customer on an ongoing basis. So I would give the last experience, on a scale from 1 to 10, I would probably give it a 4, maybe a 4+, and that's it. I think we could do so much better. I really do. And I I'm painting with a broad brush, but I will tell you that I speak to a lot of people in the industry and outside the industry, and it doesn't go much better. I think it's kind of a turn and burn kind of situation. Obviously, when you have a 60-70% turnover rate among salespeople in dealerships as it is today, it's kind of to be expected, right? That salesperson sometimes doesn't even think they're going to be here 2 years from now or 3 years from now when you're going to buy the next vehicle. So it's, what can I sell today and be done with it? Very, very unfortunate situation.
Follow-up question, how did that affect your service and where you go there?
Yeah, great question. So when that's the case and you're not as married to the selling dealer, you kind of feel like you could really go to any Range Rover dealership, maybe the closest one. But nevertheless, I will tell you a quick story. I went in and I said, hey, I've got 3,000 miles on the vehicle, and the engine light, the check engine light is on. So I'm ready to go away on a trip to see my daughter in college. And they came back and they said, yeah, okay, well, we'll fix it. They came back. They supposedly fixed it. I'm on my way home, and the check engine light comes back on. We turned around, went right back to the dealership. I said, guys, the check engine light just came back on again. They said, yeah, we don't really know what the problem is with that. And that was their answer to the check engine light. I said, so do I drive the car? Do I not? Can you give me a loaner? I'm supposed to leave tonight. No, we don't have any loaners available. Okay, so I don't know really what to tell you, because even if you left it here, we don't really know yet what to do with that. We're kind of waiting for a bulletin from Range Rover to figure that out, okay? I mean, folks, really? $140,000 for a vehicle, and you're telling me you don't know what's wrong with it? You can't give me a loaner car, and you just kind of leave me hanging. So, part of it is Range Rover's problem, right? I know the dealer's talking right now, going, "Hey, we don't build them, we just fix them." But there's got to be some kind of contingency plan that takes care of a customer that comes in and says, "Hey, I don't have a vehicle to drive. What can you do for me?" And I already had it in here to fix. But it leaves you with a bad taste. But needless to say, my next purchase on a vehicle will not be a Range Rover.
Okay. Appreciate you sharing that experience. A lot to learn from that. And I guess looking forward, younger dealers, just future leaders watching this, with your background, Jim, what mindset or skill are you consistently seeing with those folks who stay successful long term? Knowing, again, your background, the number of interviews, folks with whom you speak, what do you think that differentiator is?
For the young folks in the business that are successful versus, I think the reality is that, Generation Z is a whole new generation coming up. They don't have the same incentive that maybe previous generations have had. So it's tough right now to get somebody to come into a dealership and say, hey, it's a 50, 60 hour work week. It's a situation where you eat what you kill. There's no $40 or $50 or $60,000 salary waiting for you. And I know you heard about that in college, but that's not in retail automotive. So it's a difficult situation. Plus, the kids today that are coming out of colleges are very, very interested in a work-life balance. They want to know that they have a life after the showroom. And I came up in a generation where the showroom was your life. You were there key to key. We used to call it can't see to can't see, because you go in early in the morning and you'd leave. And then they promote, when I got into the car business, a salesperson quickly promoted into an F&I manager. And as every F&I manager knows, you are the last to leave that dealership, okay, because you close those deals out. And sometimes that's 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning in some cases. So it really is a tough business for young people to come into. I think the stage has got to get set early on for a successful career to say, look, or almost challenge that recruit that comes in to let them know right up front, this is the industry that you're about to enter. Now, here's the good news. Many people that have stayed in the industry have gone on to become general managers of stores making really good money, gone on to become F&I managers making really good money, sales managers, GSMs, GMs, assistant sales managers, used car managers. When you get to that level, there's a lot more money. Maybe there's a little bit more time off. Not so sure. It's dealership specific, but then you can go on to become a dealer principal, as I did. I mean, I went in, with sweat equity, basically, as many of my colleagues did in the industry and are still doing today. Big dealer groups are looking to have a partner in that store rather than just a GM that's on a good salary and a piece of the bottom line. Why? Because they know that a partner that's got 10%, 20% of the business is going to run that business a heck of a lot different than somebody that's just in there for a quick salary and 10% of the bottom line or what have you. So there's huge opportunities out there, but I think that today dealers have got to be very clear and very authentic and transparent with those recruits that come in to say, here's a typical week and this is what it looks like. Rather than saying, come on in, it's really great, you make a whole bunch of money, it's a fun atmosphere, who doesn't want to sell brand new cars or used cars, and people love them, and you're going to love the camaraderie, we buy you lunch on Saturday, and man, it's just great. And then that salesperson goes, whoa. I haven't had a day off in 5 or 6 days. Okay, 7 days. You want me to work tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow's a big selling day. It's Saturday. Okay. And so it's okay if you told me that going in, then I've got a decision to make. But folks, dealers, sales managers, when you recruit these people into the industry, let them know the real deal so that they can make an informed decision. For the person that stays and goes, I'm all in, let's do this, okay, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to make money, I want to succeed in the auto industry, okay, you've got a good recruit on your hand, let's go. So that they can never throw it back at you and say, well, you never told me about the long hours, and 1 week I'm making $1,000 and the next week I'm making $200, and then the next week I'm making $3,000 and the next week I'm making $500. I mean, there's things that we take for granted in the industry because many of us have been in it for so long, but to a newcomer that looks at that and goes, whoa, wait a minute, okay? I can't live under these situations. I don't know when I'm going to pay my car payment or my rent. So I think authenticity and transparent in recruitment is just vital today.
It's amazing how often that comes up, Jim, as a discussion point. And it's from the customer side, transparency is important. From the staffing side, it is as well. And what's interesting to me is just talking with folks, and from my understanding of this, is that there are a few times, and again, I don't come from the auto world. I say my claim to auto fame is growing up near the Mannheim Auto Auction in central Pennsylvania. That is it. But that transparency always seems to be rewarded to me. And I would love to ask you about that too. It just, if you take that approach, it doesn't seem to backfire for both the customer and the team. Do you believe that as well? If you're transparent through and through about how pricing works, what your day-to-day is going to be working in this amazing industry, it seems to pay out for dealers in the end.
It does. There's no question about it. I might add to that, and I think you touched on it there too, is the training of new recruits, whether they be in service for a service writer, or whether they be or service advisor or a salesperson. The training for those people is vital. And I'm not talking about folks 3 days in front of a computer that you do some online course or what have you. There's some great online courses out there, but to throw somebody in front of a computer screen and say, okay, here's your training for 3 days, or maybe even in a training room with a sales manager that, by the way, has probably never been trained on how to train somebody. They're just a sales manager. Okay. So I'm talking about proper training for those individuals by a trainer that knows what they're doing. And I think it's probably no less than 2 weeks to get it right. I know that a lot of people probably just cringed at that and said, wait a minute, I'm going to hire somebody and they're not going to hit the showroom floor until their third week. Well, if you want them to stick around long, then yeah, that's exactly what you need to do. Okay. In my humble opinion. All right. That we've got to get away from, well, look, let's throw them out there. Let's have them shadow somebody that's one of our top individuals, or maybe somebody that's a good product knowledge specialist. And there's your training. And then, by the way, if that individual lasts beyond 60 days, we'll go ahead and get them some formal training. Well, I can assure you they're not going to last 60 days. They're going to burn through a number of ups that could have been closed. Okay. They're going to become completely frustrated, and you're going to be right back looking for new salespeople in 60 days. And we've got to stop the insanity when it comes to hiring people. If a dealership group has got 2, 3, 4, 5 dealerships in its group and it doesn't have a training manager, shame on you. Okay. You've got to make a commitment in this area. We'll spend $100,000 a month per rooftop in advertising and not even blink over it. But when you ask the average dealer out there, how much do you spend on sales training? And I'm not talking about your sales manager salary. I'm talking about real training. How much do you spend every month? And they say, not a lot. We've got this course by so-and-so trainer that's available online. Okay, folks, you're playing with fire here. It's a disaster waiting to happen. And we're just going to continue to hire 20 people or hire 10 people looking to keep maybe 2 of them. How about if we do it right and we hire 10 people and we keep 9 of them? Okay. Imagine that. If you can open up your mind a little bit and think about that, I would challenge you and tell you it can be done. It can be done today if it's done right. And that's by having a trainer on staff, not a sales manager.
Thank you for sharing from training, talent, pricing. We touched on AI for a second, to China. You've been hearing from Jim Fitzpatrick, co-founder of CPT News. By the way, to hear Don's take on China, really encourage you to check out that recent interview with Jim. We'll try to link to it as well. And additional housekeeping, you can see Jim at VADA 26 convention. That's June 22nd to the 25th at the Marriott Virginia Beach Oceanfront. We thank you for watching another episode of VADA Live. If I can say that for the 3,000th time, I am Dan Kerrigan, and we hope to see you next time.